You will find our scripture reading this morning in Paul's second letter to Timothy, and at the second chapter, please. 2 Timothy chapter 2. Paul wrote these two lovely letters to Timothy, I think, for four things. He wanted to inspire young Timothy and to help him in the work of the Lord. I think he wanted him to become a great warrior and to wage a great warfare. I think that he also wanted him to become a great evangelist, to do the work of an evangelist. And he was writing so that Timothy would know how to behave himself in the house of God. We're thinking about that warrior and warlike character this morning, first of all. And Paul is writing in the second letter, in the second chapter, and at the third verse, he said, Thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. No man that warreth entangleth himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who hath chosen him to be a soldier. And you'll notice that Paul is underlining two things for Timothy here. He's exhorting him to endure hardness as the good soldier of Jesus Christ. When we remind ourselves that we wage a continual spiritual warfare, not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. What a term that is. The rulers of the darkness of this world. And when we remind ourselves that we continually wage this spiritual warfare against these rulers of the darkness, we're bound to come on hard times on the front line. And we're being exhorted, just like Timothy was, to endure hardness as the good soldier of Jesus Christ. When I was away up preaching in the Faroe Isles, Mr. Norman Cordner and I, we undertook to have meetings in every island right up into the Arctic Circle. And the further north we got, the rougher it became. And one evening we found ourselves in a little island away within the Arctic Circle, and it was quite a rough shakedown for the night. Mr. Cordner, who had been very severely wounded as a commando in the war, he wasn't able to sleep hardly on the bed and called me in the middle of the night. He said, feel that? He was just bored with a sheet on it. I said, well, it does say endure hardness, doesn't it? Oh, that's the wrong application, I know, but never mind. The Lord is exhorting us to endure hardness as good soldiers of Jesus Christ. But here's the bit he was underlining for Timothy most of all. He says, Timothy, no man that warreth entangleth himself with the affairs of this life. You know, he was afraid of young Timothy getting entangled in certain things, and he would be no use in the warfare whatsoever. And I'm positively sure, you know, that it would be possible to get so politically entangled in these days that you wouldn't be much use for the Lord in spiritual warfare. Perfectly sure of that. And I also know, you know, from a long experience that you could become not only politically entangled, but denominationally entangled. Some of the great gifts that God has given to the church are so tied up by the commands of men that they're not much use to the church at all. But you could get entangled socially too, until the social roundabout is all that you're at. Yes, you can, you know. Yes, you can get entangled, all right. And you can get entangled commercially too, you businessmen, if you'll just listen. Because it's all right when you run the business, but when the business runs you, you're entangled. And he underlines these things, you know, quite plainly. And if you're going to be a good soldier, you'll have to endure hardness, and you'll not need to be entangled. You have to watch the barbed wire of the enemy, or you'll be entangled. And when he got that across to Timothy, he said this to him down the chapter a little bit, at verse 15. He said, study. Isn't that a great word? That's a great word for all the young preachers. And mind you, it means exactly what it says. It means study. And I can tell you it'll take up a lot of your time. Yes, when you have to close the door and sit in with your nose in the book for hours, because it's the only way I know of doing it. You can't buy sermons, you know. You may do that, but they'll be no use to you. And you know, you not only need to give time, but you need to give your whole mind and everything that is within you. Somewhere in here, there's an imagination. Now, the Lord will have to get the hold of it, or I'll get off the track. And there's an old memory, and the Lord will have to fill it the way they fill the water pots down yonder with the water of the Word, if it's going to pour out anything that's going to be any good. And not only my imagination and my memory, but my understanding, miserable as it is, it'll have to be guided by God. And all my affections and my will. And I'll need to sit down and let the Lord take the hold of me if I'm going to be any good for the Lord. He says, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman. And he's coming away from the warrior now to the workman. Yes, he says, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed. Timothy, I want you to be a warrior. Keep out of the barbed wire. I want you to be a workman. Get alone with the Lord. Yes, if you notice these two things, what he's saying to Timothy is this. He's saying, get away from everything that's unwise. Don't get entangled, man. You'll not be any good to the Lord. And then he says, Timothy, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth, but shun. You wouldn't need me to expound that word for you, would you? Here's two things for the warrior. Endure hardness and don't get entangled. Here's two things for the worker. Study and shun. You know what you're to shun? Shun profane and vain babblings, for they will increase unto more ungodliness. And their word will eat as doth a canker, of whom is Hymenaeus and Philetus. Mind you, Paul wasn't afraid to name these fellows who were getting off the track. Sometimes when I come out into the open and give supper, I mean going for some of the saints, turn their nose up. Oh, I don't worry too much about you, you know. My dear friend, Paul named them. Quite as good enough for me. And where we get any of this profane and vain babblings, it's time we cracked it hard and so, and no nonsense about it. He just names the two boys, Hymenaeus and Philetus. And he not only names them, but he tells us what they were doing. Who concerning the truth have erred, saying that the resurrection is past already, and overthrow the faith of some. You shun that sort of thing. What he's trying to tell young Timothy is this. You know, if you're going to be any good for God, you'll have to get away from everything that's unwise. And you'll have to get away from everything that's untrue. Where they're teaching error, you get out, you shun it. You don't sit with it, you know, and pay for it. You get out from it, shun it. It's a good word, it's a Bible word. You're not afraid of it, shun. Because that's exactly what it says, it says shun. And it goes a bit further than this. It says, nevertheless, in spite of the entanglements, in spite of all those who are teaching error, nevertheless, the foundation of God standeth sure, having this seal, the Lord knoweth them that are his. Lovely touch, isn't it? And let every one that nameth the name of Christ depart from iniquity. You see how he's switching round. He was a great old teacher. He starts with the warrior, then he comes to the worker or the workman, Then he gives on to the worshipper. Them that name the name of Christ is depart from iniquity. He's just saying to Timothy, look, if you want to be any use to the Lord, you have to get away from everything that's unwise. Don't get rolled up in things that'll keep you back. You have to get away from everything that's untrue. You'll never be any use when you're sitting under error. And you have to get away from everything that's unclean. Depart from iniquity. And he's laying down the law like a man should. He's trying to help this young fellow. And then he explains it just a little bit more fully to him. Verse 20, he says, but in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and of silver, but also of wood and of earth, and some to honor and some to dishonor. Then he said this to him. He said, if a man therefore purge himself from these, he shall be a vessel unto honor, sanctified and meet for the master's use. I like this wonderful statement. He says, if a man therefore purge himself from these. I like the point he makes. If a man, in fact, there's another translation of it. If any man, and this is very well worth going through your New Testament and marking, because we're in the Laodicean period, and when the Lord was talking to the church at Laodicea, you remember how he described them, neither hot nor cold. You remember how he pointed out their deficiency. They had no gold. You remember how he spake to them. You say that you have need of nothing, and all the time you're poor, blind, miserable, wretched, naked. At last he seems to look at the whole church and say, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man, I'm sure we're living in the day when the Lord is looking for men and women. Yes, he just wants you. They could use you, if they could get the hold of you. I like the point he's making here. He seems to leave Timothy. He says, if a man purge himself from me, if he gets away from everything that's unwise, and gets away from everything that's untrue, and gets away from everything that's unclean, he shall be. I don't only like the point, I like the promise, because it is a promise. The great point, if any man. It's a great promise. If a man purge himself from these, he shall be. And I don't only like the point, and I don't only like the promise, I like the picture. He says he shall be a vessel unto honor, sanctified, and meet. The vessel set apart, ready for the master's use. And I don't only like the point, and I don't only like the promise, and I don't only like the picture, I like the phrase, for the master's use. It's a great phrase, isn't it? It's just for him, for the master's use. I want to talk to you very carefully about the vessel the master uses. Talk to you very carefully about it. I know that that vessel needs to be away from everything that's unwise, because it could get entangled in things if you didn't watch. And I know it needs to be away from everything that's untrue, and everything that's unclean, and everything that's unworthy, and everything that's unreal, and they're all in the chapter. But I want to do it for you in a way this morning that I trust it'll stay with you and you'll understand it clearly. I want to take out insignificant things that the Master used. I want to talk about the time when the Lord was coming over the Mount of Olives. And he stopped and he said to two of his disciples, go over to the village over against you at Bethphage and Bethany. And at the entering in you shall find a colt tied. It was just the colt of an ass, you know that. It was the foal of a donkey. And those of you who've been brought up in the country and you've seen the colt of an ass or the little foal of a donkey, it's the most comical little thing you've ever seen in your life. It was standing at the corner of the road tied to a stake. And it's got long legs and long ears. And you almost seem to naturally smile when you see the coat of an ass. It's funny look. It's like what my son said about me when he saw a picture of me in one of the meetings. He said, you know, you would know you anywhere, Dad. Your ears stick out like a donkey. Yeah, great, you know. Well, it's just a comical-looking thing, and it's not much to take notice of. And yet the Lord said to these two disciples, now go and loose the ass and bring it, and if anybody asks any questions, just say, the Lord hath need of him. Something the Lord wanted to use, you know. Because there's a lot of things implied here. When you go back into the old economy, there was a law in the Old Testament that the firstling of an ass, it had to be redeemed by a lamb, or they had to break its neck. And you know, according to one of the scriptures, this was indeed the firstling of an ass. And the first thing that we take note of is this. The very fact that it's alive and standing there, it must have been redeemed by the lamb. You see, if the firstling of an ass wasn't redeemed by the lamb, they've got to break its neck. It's like the sinner. You either get redeemed by the lamb or you'll be destroyed by the law. It's like that. And this little ass must have been redeemed. Because the trouble was, although it was redeemed, it was tied. Men have tied it. They are always fiddling about to tie up the servants of God. Yes, well, it'll have to be loosed if it's going to be any use to the Lord, won't it? You've got to get it loosed. It has to be redeemed. It will need to be loosed. You redeem. Can the Lord have you for anything he wants you for? I'll tell you this. If you go back to the story, and I'm trying to save time by not going back, it was not only the firstling of an ass, but it says this, whereon never man sat. Nobody ever had their leg across this wee donkey. And I've reared in the country, you know, and I'll tell you city folks a thing or two. If you ever find a donkey that nobody ever had their leg over, don't you put yours over it first. Just warning you, that's all. Because I'll tell you, it'll pitch you where you've never been before. You see, this is the very wonderful thing about this, that when the ass that was redeemed, was loosed and brought to the Lord, the moment he put his leg over it, it became submissive. Never gave a squeaky. Because if you're going to be any use to the Lord, you know, firstly, you'll need to be redeemed, and secondly, you'll need to get all the ties loose, no matter who has tied you, and you'll need to become submissive to the Lord, just to the Lord. I really think if any of the apostles or disciples had put their leg over this ass, it would have tossed them high in the air, but it was submissive to the Lord. And I'll tell you this, you know, it was only the colt of an ass, and the moment that he sat on it, every fiber and every nerve and every sinew and every muscle and every ounce of strength and every drop of blood had to move to take the weight. Oh, I need to take a bit of weight too, you know. Not all fooling around, looking for burden folk these days. Paul talked about going through this world having great heaviness and continual sorrow in my heart, and a great number of us know nothing at all about it. Not a thing do we know. Yes, you're going to be any good for the Lord, you need to begin with redemption. Then you'll need to get loose. Then you'll need to become submissive. Then you'll need to take the strain. We're looking for boys and girls who'll take the strain. Ready to work, ready to bear their weight and pull their weight. You know, when I was way up on the Mount of Olives, I got away out from the crowd because I can learn better on my own. I'm a queer kid. I know that people think I'm a queer kid, but then I don't mind. My own way of doing it, and I'll do it my way. So I got away out from the crowd and wandered around a bit and had a look at this Mount of Olives. Mind you, it's a steep mount, you know. It goes right down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. And then the Kidron is down there, and you cross the Kidron, you go up the other side, and you would go in through where the beautiful gate of the temple was. It's now blocked. I had a good look at this pathway right down. It's a rough old path, not tarmac or M1 or anything like that. It's an old broken path and pieces of rock. And I began to think about this donkey carrying the Lord down here. I don't know what weight the Lord was, but I know it was only the coat of an ass. And I know it was having quite a job. And I knew this, if it was going to be any use to him at all, it would have to walk circumspectly. I learned that all of a sudden. If you're going to be any use to the Lord, you'll need to be redeemed, and you need to be loosed, and you'll need to be submissive, and you'll need to take the weight, and you'll need to walk worthy of the Lord. No use, if you're fooling around when you get out of the meeting. I thought about this little house, and the Lord came down the mountain this house, and halfway down he stopped, and he looked over the city, and he's sitting on the arse now. He began to weep, wept over the city. He said, Jerusalem, if you'd only known in this thy day the things that belong unto thy peace, are hid from your eyes. The days will come, the enemy will cast the trench about thee and ham thee in on every side, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. And he's sitting weeping, and I think he was really moved. And I think if he wept the way I think he wept, the arse felt him weeping. It had fellowship with the sufferings of Christ. Well, we'll need to know something, about fellowship with the sufferings of Christ. There's no snobbery about that. Oh, I tell you, this is the vessel the Master uses. I think this little house, it put everything it had into it to exalt Christ, and only Christ. Man, the folks as he came into Jerusalem cried, Hosanna to the Son of David, and the arse was never mentioned. Would you like to be like this? This is one of the things the Master uses. There's a whole lot of insignificant things that the Master uses. Wonder how many of you remember this story. You like to look at it. It's Matthew 17. Have a look at it now. It's Matthew's Gospel 17, verse 24. And when they were come to Capernaum, they that received tribute money came to Peter and said, Doth not your master pay tribute? He said, Yes. And when he was come into the house, Jesus prevented him, saying, Jesus spake before he could speak. What thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom or tribute? Of their own children or of strangers? Peter saith unto him, Of strangers. Jesus saith unto him, Then are the children free? Notwithstanding, lest we should offend them, go thou to the sea, and cast an hook, and take out the fish that first cometh up. And when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. That take and give unto them for me and thee. They used this fish, didn't they? Hadn't much to look at. I was preaching at the university in Wales, in Canada, and I had taken up this story in a quite different way than what I'm doing this morning. And some atheistic old fellow in the meeting, he'd come along to meetings to disturb them, and he's always looking for holes, And he's waiting for me at the end of the meeting. He said, I'd like to talk to you, Mr. Mullan, about this. I said, that's all right, go ahead. He said, you see this piece of money here? This must have belonged to somebody. Must have fallen into the sea. And if the Lord is as knowledgeable as you say he is, he must have known who it belonged to, and he had no right to take somebody's money to pay his own tax. Quite good, isn't it? I said, let's begin at the beginning now. Are you admitting to me just now that our Lord had divine knowledge? You're admitting that. I want you to start at the start. You can't start halfway through the thing, you'll have to start at the beginning. Are you admitting to me that he did know everything? That he had divine knowledge? Afraid to answer, I said, you're an old coward, that's what you are. He says it looks like it. No, it doesn't look like it. It is it. He did know. He happened to know that this piece of silver was inside this fish. That's all there is about it. And if you're going to argue from that, we'll stop there. Also, are you admitting to me that the Lord had not only divine knowledge, but had absolute divine power? Because there were millions of these little fishes in the sea. And somehow he was going to direct that one out of the shoal, took the hook and put it on. Are you admitting that he had divine power? He knew I was going to push him round a bit, and he was almost wanting out of it. I said, you're not running. No, I didn't send for you, but you're not running. I said, it might surprise you that the piece of money, you're supposing that it belonged to somebody else. Let me suppose that it belonged to the Lord. That the Lord dropped it in one night. That the Lord gave this money to this fish. And there's a lot of fish swimming in this assembly this morning. And the Lord gave you money. And the Lord helped the fish to keep it. all the time it had it, so that they didn't vomit it up or waste it in some other way. Yeah, it's getting a great story now, because this is what I think happened. It was the Lord's own money, and he gave it to a fish, and he knew there would come a time when he would need it again. And when he wanted it, the fish was ready. You want to be of any use to the Lord, do you? You like to be used of the Lord? Do you just like him to give you money? You don't want him to take it off you again? Because there may be something that the Lord needs to honor his name, and he wants the money for it, and you have it, and it's his. Ready now. Just a fish. Oh, it thrills me to think there were 10 million fishes in Galilee, and a big shoal is coming round, and there's about 70,000 in the shoal, they tell me. And you know, out of the shoal, he directs this one out there, come on, you gentlemen, and onto the hook, because he wasn't only asking for the money, he was asking for his life. Oh, do we really want to be used of the Lord? Has to be like the ass. You have to be like a fish. Wonder are we prepared to give him every halfpenny we have and our lives into the bargain. Do you remember C.T. Stein? My, I went down to see the mansion that he was born in. It was bigger than Blenheim Palace where old Churchill was born. And there were 6 sons in that family. And when the old man died, he left each one of them £29,000 apiece. And Stud got his 29,000 and took a pen and signed 2,000 to the Salvation Army, 2,000 to this and that and the other, until the 29 were gone. Stood without a penny 10 minutes after he'd got it. Well, I'm not saying the Lord's asking you, but I'm just pointing out that if he did ask you, are you ready for the Master's use? I assure you Stud was ready. And I'll tell you this, he was dying of asthma at the same time. And when he sat on the boat and the boat was moving out when he was going to Africa and his money gone and he's panting for breath, somebody said to him, you're not going to Africa as a missionary like this, are you? You can't go. And he made the great saying, he looked back and never blinked. He said, if Jesus Christ was God and died for me, there is no sacrifice so great that I can make for him. What way would you argue with a fellow like that? You want to be used of the Lord, you'll need to be ready for a lot of things. You remember the cock that crowed? There's not much either, is it? Our Lord used it. It opened its mouth. It got the funniest squeak you ever heard. Never mind. The Lord used it. You remember how Peter had said, I'll never leave you. God says, before the cock crows thrice, you'll have made a mess of it. And of course, the first 2 times he never heard it at all. He's so impassioned about denying. And then at the psychological moment, the cock crowed. Peter turned around. The Lord just looked at him. I think he knows. I told him. He went away out. The cock was used to show a backslider the error of his ways. That's what it was. The Lord might want you to speak up someday. And I think it was used in its own backyard too. Into the bargain. Well, that's where the Lord used it. He shifted it all in its own backyard, with its own funny language. Yes, never mind about your dialect. It's far too much accent and how you say this and that and the other. And now I've come to find out that the boys who thought I knew, they don't know anyway, because they change it round and round. It's pianist, and then it's pianist, and bless you, they don't know where they are. You could hit at any road and you'd be nearer right than them. Yes. One of them says, it is Habakkuk you call the prophet in the Old Testament. And then the other one says it is Habakkuk. He doesn't know either. They sicken me, that's all. The Lord will use you just as you are in your own backyard. And he wants to, Don't you let them scare you. They don't scare me, I assure you. And I can only count up to 12 and then I'm stuck. Never mind. Lord can use you. Friend, you like to be used, the Lord? Have to get away from everything that's unwise. I watch it. I won't become too deeply involved. I want to get away from everything that's untrue. Unless we've got doctrines in the book I don't listen to. Want to get away from everything that's unclean and unreal and unprofitable and unworthy. You need to be redeemed. You need to become submissive to the Lord. He does one aim and object, to exalt Christ and Christ alone. Single-eyedness. Need to be prepared to give him everything that he's given you in your life into the bargain. You need to let him open your mouth, at the right moment. Oh, we're so wonderful on Sunday. But in the works tomorrow, when they're blaspheming his name and he wants you to speak, you're like a dummy. You can't get used with that sort of principle. Say it this morning too. Take my life. Just take it. But you, Sam, are the biggest donkey in this place. The fish swimming in the sea. There's millions like me. I'm only a cock in the backyard. But my Lord can take the things which are not to bring to naught. He can use you. And you. Say it to him this morning. Take my life. Do whatever you like. Only magnify your name. God bless you.
Somebody say amen. Empty and broken, I came back to him. A vessel unworthy, so scarred with sin, but he did not despair. He started over again, and I bless the day he didn't throw the clay away. He fashions the clay, a vessel of honor I am today, all because Jesus didn't throw the clay away. The potter and I am the clay, molded in his precious image. He wants me to stay. Oh, and when I stumble, when I fall, oh, when my vessel breaks, he just picks up those broken pieces. He does not throw the clay away. Over and over, he molds me and makes me into his likeness. He fashions the clay, a vessel Jesus.